Hi, this is Michael Jasper. I'm Executive Vice President at Velocity Procurement, and I'm back today with KO, aka Christian O'Meara from JAGGAER. He's Senior Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, and today we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence within supplier management. So KO, just jumping right into this, where are you seeing the best use cases for artificial intelligence in supplier management today?
Yeah, so supplier management has been a continual area of investment for us. We really have a robust full life cycle that does things like supplier performance, things like quality assurance, does heavy direct material type of analysis. We're extremely excited about the capabilities of applying AI. We've been doing it for a number of years in the supplier management space. We have things like the ability to use our digital assistant to navigate directly to supplier records. We have the ability to do things like right now we have 13 documents, various ISO certifications like 27001, which sort of everybody needs to typically introduce to their customers and their suppliers to basically understand their capabilities from an IT infrastructure perspective and protection standpoint. We can now consume those with things like OCR type of capabilities, extract critical key information. And we've got 13 of those that are in place already today on common documents. We're introducing in the next 12 to 18 months a series of additional capabilities to allow customers to put their own documents in. There's a lot of regionally required documents, a lot of country required documents, and we want to make sure we keep on top of that curve.
Interesting. A lot of what you're touching on there really goes down to risk management. And, I think we'd all agree that it's, the more proactive we are on managing our risk, the more thorough we are, and, ultimately the more compliant we are. Can you talk a little bit more about where JAGGAER's going with AI around risk?
Sure. I think, if we saw one thing out of the pandemic, it exasperated organizational dynamics around risk, right? So most of the leadership I'm working with now are talking about supply chain resiliency without exception. Most of them are talking about a ESG standard, say around carbon emissions, scope 2, scope 3. We're working with folks really to drive those key and critical initiatives that you see our board level dialogues and discussions and help them in that journey to being able to satisfy those. We've long time had partnerships with folks like Risk Methods or Sephora, where they're using AI to do, end tier level analysis of where risk is happening within the supply chain, whether that was things like the Suez Canal issue we had last year, or other complicated situations where they can do a China plus one strategy or something of that nature. How do we keep near shore, onshore, close to shore type of operations within our supply chain so we have alternative suppliers for contemplation?
Perfect. Especially the way things have been going in the supply chain, I think that type of risk mitigation is really crucial for a lot of companies. Can you give some other examples of how customers are utilizing this today, and what's been their feedback, what's been their experience?
Sure. So, one of the things we had to do was introduce a lot of new suppliers over the last 24 to 36 months, right? We had to replace suppliers because of supply chain issues, because of cost, because of other factors, risk, the Ukraine war, et cetera. So as you're contemplating new suppliers, there's analysis out there in the public domain that suggests a new supplier relationship for a complex organization, let's say a Fortune 500, might cost as much as $20,000 to $40,000 for contemplation, consideration, qualification of them as a supplier. So how do we eliminate the sort of mundane, repetitive task of looking at Accord certificates, checking for validity, checking the insurance levels? How do we automate the ISO certification review? How do we look at things like GDPR in a very efficient, very scalable manner? No company is able to find resources that want to pour through these documents. It's very laborious, it's very mundane, it's very repetitive. Folks want to spend time on where are the issues? How do I remediate those? How do I overcome those? With new suppliers, there's often concern around supply chain and shipping. So we added some shipping validation automation routines. On the direct material space, we added some order prediction capabilities. So when you're working with a new supplier, your forecasting capabilities where we have things like ASNs, or forecast in the firm period, how do we handle those fluctuations and predictions when the supply chain's whipsawing around? Those are all been critical things we've been looking at and examining in the supplier management space.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, you're doing a lot around supplier management and, not relying on AI, but really looking at how we can use AI to supplement a lot of the things that we're already doing well, which I think is a really smart strategy there. As we look at, the rest of the year and going into 2024, what does Jagger have planned around artificial intelligence within supplier management on top of what you're doing today?
Sure. So I think a couple of the exciting things I'd highlight for you, Jagger is, in the public domain, opining autonomous commerce as our vision and strategy for our customers to help them along that maturity curve. And as part of delivering on that, we believe we have within our unique competitive differential, the obligation to the supplier community. So while we're talking about supplier management from the outside in perspective, or inside out perspective, how do we talk about it from the outside in perspective? How do we provide AI capabilities to the supplier community? We recently introduced AR automation to help with invoice conversion into digital formats for our supplier community. We recently introduced the RFP automation tool, which is using AI and ML to populate RFPs, get rid of those mundane time, filling out the RFP, let them spend time on tailoring it to the customer and making it specific for that specific environment. The things we're working on next is, as I mentioned at the outset, allowing our customers to choose any type of document that's coming in as part of a supplier assessment, evaluation, or performance consideration, and allow them to train the system to automatically consume and alert around that. We're also adding in the supplier performance area, which I think is an exciting development, the capability to effectively provide suggestions on how to remediate a risk that occurs in a supplier scorecard or scoreboard. So it'll provide suggestions that, based on what you've done historically with other similar suppliers in these categories, we recommend you try this. That to me is a real critical time-saving type of capability that we're really excited about exploring.
Yeah, I like the fact that you're focusing, not just on the customer side, but on the supplier side too, because ultimately that's going to help strengthen that relationship between buyer and supplier. And, I think one thing we've learned through the pandemic is that those relationships can become critical. So I like the fact that you're focusing on both sides and how we bring benefit to obviously our organizations, but as well as our suppliers. So really excited to see how that turns out.
Yeah, thanks. We acknowledged in our sort of differentiation that the network component of it, if we don't serve both sides, we do everyone a disservice, right? If we can't identify ways to get more business, expand the existing business they have, or find new business, we will ultimately not be a steward for our clients. And we think that obligation is a special one, and we look forward to helping them get to that value quicker and deliver an ROI for their stakeholders, both internal and external.
Absolutely. Well, Keo, it's been good talking to you. I know AI is changing real fast, so let's keep in touch and see what's happening in 6 months. I can't wait to see how these areas we've talked about come to fruition and what's new on the table, as those are realized. So appreciate your time.
Great. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate the interaction and look forward to talking to you soon. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, you too.